All right, well, welcome. This is the information architecture panel here today, and my name is Rob Vanasco. I work in product development at PSCU, which is a financial services company for credit unions. And with us today, we have who you just heard, Alison Chefec, who works in product design at BuzzFeed. Give her another hand.
Yeah.
All right, and we've got Amy Espinosa, who is, she has her own company, Dots and Cubes, here in Tampa. Give her a hand. She braved from the audience and shared with us her goals and her motivations and her dreams, so give her a hand for that, too. And then we've got Gabriel Valdivia. He is a lead product designer at Facebook, and he spoke here yesterday, so give him a hand, too. All right. You need a minute? You're good?
I'm good.
All right,
pretty
cool.
good.
Okay, so we're going to talk about information architecture today, and a lot of that has to do with context and meaning. So I'm just going to throw some questions out, and we'll kind of get a little conversation going, and then we'll have some time later on for the audience to ask questions as well. So we'll start talking a little bit about meaning. And so what does design or information architecture mean to you? Gabriel, why don't we start with you and we'll just kind of talk.
Sure. So, I mean, design at its very core for me is about problem solving. Doing so in a way that is aligned with a few constraints set up by the business or whatever the goal may be. At Facebook, we have kind of three pillars of what makes something well designed. The first one is it well crafted? Second one being, is it easy to use? And the third, and probably the most important one, is it valuable? So we constantly, as we design things, we're weighing against these three pillars and making sure that it checks all those boxes.
Awesome.
Cool. I can hop in on the IA front.
Yeah, definitely.
So information architecture is a systematic and holistic approach to organizing information in a way that makes it findable and understandable across multiple channels and contexts, regardless of the medium that the user chooses to access it. So if you think about BuzzFeed, as some of your examples were very clear. So they have a website, they have a mobile platform. I don't know if you have print, but some publications have print. So making sure that information is communicated consistently and so that it's understandable to people no matter how they choose to access your product or service.
Definitely, and I think from a credit union standpoint, we deal a lot with our credit union members. And if you've ever banked at a local or community credit union, you know how important those members are to the credit union, as they're actually the owners of the credit union. So when I think about design, I immediately think about that credit union member, what their experience is, what they're going through as they're in this transition between using the credit union branch and using their mobile device or their computer. So I focus a lot at work on thinking about their experience, what they're going through, and how we can design better experiences for them.
Cool. Yeah, I think Gabe hit it on the head, solving a problem for us. So on the CMS side at BuzzFeed, we're helping our users perform a task. So there may be a bunch of different tasks wrapped up into a giant task. They're creating a post, but within that, there's so many other things that they need to do. So making the information making the information they need to find to put their information in. So there's sort of two levels of the information. Where do you put in your title, and then what does that look like once you put in your title? So then how is the information, the hierarchy structured? And so that's something we think a lot about. And I think also on the user-facing side, on like the website side or the app side, helping users navigate through our content, but also being cognizant of the differences in platforms. And so sometimes on different platforms, we might not bring out certain information. The hierarchy might be different. We might hide some stuff that we know either doesn't perform well on a certain platform or is just not as important because we're dealing with less space on, let's say, mobile. We might kind of hide certain things, which has different user experience effects, of course.
Yeah, and just one last thing. The difference, I think, between design and information architecture is that information architecture is kind of abstract. Look at the big picture. Design focuses on a specific product that the user interacts with, and those can't be the same job. Otherwise, it's not done very effectively.
So then do you feel like IA is important to design?
Oh, very, yes. IA definitely informs design. Again, you have, somebody has to understand the big picture. So understanding the information that the business wants to communicate and making things findable, like what you had mentioned. I'm sure BuzzFeed uses a lot of taxonomy and categorization, and then they have to understand their users. So all of that information somebody needs to understand in order to align the business goals with the product and service that you're offering. So.
Awesome. Cool. So when we talk about information, that kind of leads into talking about language and how language helps to facilitate communication and how that leads to understanding. So maybe share a story or a moment about when language has caused either frustration in design or delight. Anybody
Okay.
can jump in.
I'll go last.
Okay, I'll go first. Alison and I just met Wednesday night, and she was telling me a story about her experience at the hotel that she checked into. And, this is a very important thing to consider because information is everywhere. It's represented through the physical world, through the digital world, and oftentimes we don't consider it. But this has to do with a map. So she was coming from the airport, just off the plane, had an interesting cab ride, with all of her luggage. She's trying to get into this hotel, and she finds a map on a door that she thought she was supposed to go into. There's only a phrase on that map that says, "You are here." The rest of the map is visual, symbolic, trying to deliver information to her so that she understands where she needs to go. And it was very confusing for her because of the way they represented that information. So it made it a very frustrating experience just to find the lobby of the hotel. So, oftentimes people think of information architecture as a lot of taxonomies are behind the scenes, but it's also in our physical world too, and everything around us informs. So.
Right, because if it had said, walk specifically here and you will find the lobby, I would have known where to go. Which, by the way, I do know now where to go, so if anyone needs to know, I'm your person.
Well, and there were several touch points, too, leading you to that conclusion. Like the driver said, this is the entrance.
The driver was convinced that was the main
There's a door.
entrance.
There was a sign that said, "You are here." But then there was another sign that says, you're not in the right place.
Right, not the main entrance.
Walk somewhere.
Yeah. So probably a very frustrating experience for you.
It was very frustrating.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, and I think it really translates almost directly to design in 2D and 3D spaces. I think of information architecture and design as like environmental design for your app. So just things like the way the screens are labeled or the navigation patterns is really what directs you how to move around the app. And an app the best designed app is one that doesn't require any labels and ones that upon first viewing you can find your way around.
Yes, information architecture is not a new thing. It's been around for over 40 years. Just we are now forced to deal with the amount of information that we're producing. And I think that the key factor moving forward for IAs is that we do need to make sure that we are not solely focused on the digital world because those boundaries between the digital and physical world are falling fast. So placemaking, wayfinding, those are all examples of IA.
Yeah, and Gabriel, I mean, you're kind of bridging that gap between the physical and the digital. Gabriel, you work in VR for Facebook, correct? So how do you foresee or how are you using information architecture within that space?
So it's really early right now. The designs we have so far in the VR space are really just a direct translation from 2D into 3D space. So you see a lot of floating rectangles navigating on these spaces. We haven't quite nailed it yet. We're still experimenting on what does a grid look like in VR. You know, how do I navigate from one space to another space without feeling like I'm, you know, teleporting?
Sure.
So those are all questions that we're trying to uncover. We haven't quite nailed it yet.
It'll also be important to figure out how funny cat videos play into the VR world as well, so that BuzzFeed can insert itself.
What if
into
you could
VR.
be the cat?
Oh, there you go.
Or the mop.
Oh, either one.
Or
You don't want to
either
be the mop.
But let's dig more into design part of it. So design is kind of all around us, right? This conference was designed. These chairs that we're sitting in were designed. Hopefully somebody put some thought into this stage design so that we don't fall through it. But some of the most important design decisions that we can make, and Gabriel, you kind of touched on this a little bit, are through the design of questions. I know you've got your 3 pillars. So maybe share a question that you designed and how it helped you achieve a deeper understanding towards a design problem.
I can share a story. So I've been thinking a lot about email communication, and it sounds so obvious, but we are communicating so much over like direct message, and email communication it's even harder to get through to that person through an email. You have basically the top line. Now in modern browsers and on our phones, you only see who it's from, the subject, and like a little snippet of the first line. So that's how much you have to grab their attention. And there's some crazy statistic on the amount of like the attention span of someone when they see this. It's minuscule. It's terrifying. So I talked a little bit before about how we conduct internal user testing for our internal products at BuzzFeed. So there was a time a few months ago when I was trying to get volunteers for this program. And so we talked a lot about how to email 500 people and get them to open it and then perform a task. So I actually attended this really cool email action writing course at BuzzFeed, and it really helped me understand how to structure an email. So you start with the WIFM. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, the what's in it for me. And that goes at the top. So why am I opening this email? Like, what do I get out of this? So in this situation, I'm trying to design this question, which is, will you participate in our user testing session? And I'm trying to actually design this program, an internal user testing program that we started on our squad, but designing it and getting people to volunteer for it and then come to it and organizing the sessions and designing how this whole thing works just logistically was sort of my problem at hand. So instead of sending an email and saying, will you participate in our user testing program, I said something along the lines of, the CMS needs your help. Help make the products you use every day better. And then I started to give more detailed information, but you really need that first like kicker to grab someone's attention. So just something as simple as like sending an email and getting someone to do something for you, for me took consideration in how to even design that, not visually, but with language.
Yeah, and even before that, like, how do you even get the person to open the email? Like, you can take all this time to craft the perfect email, but then just to get them to click on it and open it, that's getting harder and harder to do every day.
That's the thing. So I emailed about 500 people and got 30 responses. Like, that's the amount of people not opening email. And then you even hear people, someone has sent an email about something that's important. Forget about my user testing shindig, but and you're talking to your colleague and they're like, oh, what's happening? And you're like, didn't you read the email? And they're like, verbatim, I don't read email. What? It's so hard to even just get through to someone.
Yeah. So on the communication front, I'll hop on in a different context. My boys are 5 and 7, and as boys usually do, they fight all the time. So as a mom, to keep my sanity, I've decided to try and figure out, okay, what is the root cause of their fighting? So my questions to them were, designed so that I could gain a deeper understanding of the cause of the conflict. Most times it was caused by them playing when they were playing games. So whether it was online with Minecraft or Mario Kart, whatever it may be, and oftentimes they use their imagination and they bring what they know from those games into the real world and they play in their imagination. So I happened to ask them one time, did you agree to the rules before you started? And I hit on something, and they're like, no, and they started thinking about it. And so now I use that as a tool to help them communicate when they're out at the park. They were playing football one time and they were fighting, so I went over to the group and I was like, did you guys establish rules before you started? The answer was no. And that actually brought it around to a better communication process for them where they got along and then they had fun. So in communication, asking questions just to get a deeper understanding and then designing a question to help facilitate that communication for a better experience is something I've found useful.
Yeah, I'm working on that now too with my son, because usually the question is, why are your hands so filthy? How does that happen? And it's not getting through to him, and so I need to design some new questions around that to maybe get him. I was like, does it bother you that your hands are that dirty? No, not really. I was like, well, I guess that's all right too. How about you, Gabe?
Oh man, I don't have any kids. That's a great.
That's okay.
Maybe I'll take a different route. I can't think of any particular specific questions, but I do want to touch on a question format that the folks at Tembo brought up yesterday, which I think is worth reiterating. This idea of the yes and. So when you're generating ideas, it's a very fragile kind of stage. It's really easy to kind of shut down an idea and bring the room quiet. So adopting the format of accepting ideas, so yes, and then building upon that idea to move the conversation along, that I think can be really powerful. So if somebody brings up an idea and your immediate question is like, why would you do that, or want to shut it down? I think it's important to kind of phrase it in a positive way that kind of just builds upon that and questions it on the way.
Yes, and
well, that also phrases it for possibilities.
Exactly.
So instead of pitching, and we did the same thing at an event we just had in our workshop, but we phrased it as yes and instead of but. Mm-hmm. The but is the stopper, right? You want people to be innovative, so you need to structure to facilitate that. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Definitely. And so, a lot of what we talked about, these questions kind of uncover deeper understanding. They can uncover patterns too, right? And so we tend to see these repeating patterns, especially when you're doing your usability testing. And so we move from this place of not knowing into knowing. And then when we get to a place where we can agree on these patterns, then we can create standards, right? So, and those standards will generally help us work better together. So tell us some standards that you guys are currently using in your companies, then what kind of impact they have on design.
I'll go.
Go.
So sometime middle of the last year, we released our style guide, our BuzzFeed style guide. It's a reusable CSS style guide, so it is optimized for engineers and designers, which is really cool. So the problem we had was, like I sort of touched on before, we had so many overlapping visual styles. For a single button on the website, we probably had 30 different types of buttons in our code base, and it was horrifying when you got them all together and looked at them. So we had to do something, and so we built this style guide that is super simple. It's very basic. It's not prescriptive, really. So you have your typography, colors, button styles, form styles, and what this allows for is it doesn't make everything look the same. So you have 15 different designers working on different projects, internal tools, external stuff, user-facing stuff, but it just gives building blocks for us to iterate faster, to experiment faster, to prototype faster, and it gives us some kind of consistency. So a user who comes to our website now knows what a button looks like. They know what is the clickable thing. They know that all of the buttons are blue with white text, not blue with a gradient, or maybe black, or maybe rainbow. They know what they look like. So by creating these standards, we've not only helped internally us design faster, iterate faster, spend time on the important problems, not what does this button look like. We know what it looks like already. So we're more focused on the user experience and the IA and how we're structuring, how we're solving this problem. And it also has helped our users on the visual consistency side. Things are going to look the same now across our products, cross-platform, and then within each platform.
Interesting. So one of the things that I'm dealing with at my company is we have this myriad of products that either are credit union facing or member facing or used internally. And so they've been built over the years. There's no consistency. There was no style guide. And so this is one of the things that I'm trying to do, is to bring some cohesive look and feel to the products that we develop. And in so doing, create a style guide. What I'm curious about is how you communicate that style guide out to the organization.
Yeah, so we got sort of a core group together to work on it, and we did a huge inventory assessment of like what we had going on and what were the core things we wanted to put in this style guide. And we were transparent from the very beginning when we were creating this that we were doing it. And we involved all the designers on the team in the creation of each of the individual elements. So when we decided what the buttons look like, they were put in a place that everyone could access them and people could comment and give feedback, and the entire design team helped formulate what these styles actually look like. And then once the style guide was done, or the V1 was sort of done, because nothing's ever done, we have live docs. So we have, anyone, they're actually open to the public. And so so it's not only the actual styles that we're building, but it's how do we communicate how to use them in the documentation. So how do you put this button on your website? You have to grab this code snippet, and then what are the different ways you can customize it, or what are the different options for buttons? So we're also designing the documentation around it. And in terms of how we communicate that to the entire organization, so we have an open Slack channel that's public to our organization. So the core team, the product is called Solid. So the core Solid team is in that chat and is able to answer questions from anyone who's using it. We have weekly meetings, so we're still iterating on it. We're constantly building on it and fixing things or changing things, adding things. And we've had presentations throughout the organization. Early on, we were presenting, this is what we've done, this is why it's important, this is why it's cool. So a lot of transparency up front. But the designers have really been like evangelists for it. The designers and then the engineers, and we gained a lot of traction. Actually, during our last Hack Week, we had people start to use it for the first time during Hack Week in its sort of beta version, and people got pretty excited about it, and that really helped fuel it forward and let us get buy-in from the org. But updates, in terms of like releasing updates, we release updates almost every week. We try to, so we named them the Solid Scouts. So it's one person from each team who's using the framework, and they're in like an email group. So we email them weekly, and we've got the brand is, it's a little like Boy Scout with the Solid logo on it. It's pretty cute. So we email the Solid Scouts every week, and we let them know what's going on, and then they're able to disseminate information to their team. So we're making sure that we have a touch point really on every team who's using our style guide.